Right, so let's just get started. Is there audio with this?
When someone clicks any one of the buttons, it changes the justification of the text in the button and in the results field randomly to left centered or right justified, and it also changes the font size from fairly small to a bit bigger. The second design is again a relatively standard layout, and in this one, when you click one of the buttons, it makes it very small with a much smaller font size until you press the equals button, which resets it back to its normal size. The third design, the buttons are laid out and sorted in alphabetical order based on the symbol that they are representing, so like clear, divide, 8, equals 5, 4, etc. Also, each of the buttons is at an angle to make them harder to read, and when you mouse over one of the buttons it grows quite large, and for some of the lower ones it means it obscures the text on the adjacent buttons. Which can make it quite difficult, as you can see, to actually click what you want.
Hi, welcome to Joshua's first design of the annoying calculator. The first annoying feature of this calculator is its flashing result display screen, which is being flashed repeatedly white and red. Second feature is the flashing number buttons, which you can see they're being flashed in yellow, and different buttons are flashing differently. The third feature is the operator buttons, which are being flashed in blue. And the last feature is the loading display screen, which shows up here whenever you press a number button. And the duration of the loading screen varies depending on what you press and when you press it. Let's do a demo now. I'll press 1. Notice the loading screen is being shown. Keep note of the duration that is being shown. Now I'll try 7 to make it 17. Notice that the duration then was faster. This doesn't work with operator buttons, so if I press multiply, notice that it shows up immediately. It's not a feature, it's not a feature, but it's a property, where when the loading screen shows up, whatever that you press will not be shown as a result. I'll show you. But let's say I click 4, and click 5 and 2. So I'm expecting to see 452, but it's only being shown 4, because whatever that you press during the loading screen, it will not show up, but only what you first pressed. So that's it for the first Hi, welcome to the second design of Joshua's annoying calculator. The first annoying feature is, as with the first calculator, the flashing yellow lights from the number buttons. And the second annoying feature is the flashing blue lights for the operator buttons. Notice that now the flashing has been increased and is flashing much more rapidly now. The last feature is when you press the equal button, the calculator will vibrate. So let's do a demo. Let's go 1 again. Multiply with 9. Now I'll press the equal button. So the calculator vibrates. And it's plus 5. and so on and so on.
Well, that's an interesting one. I mean, so this one, of course, vibration is okay. It's almost like indication of work. It's like, ooh, I'm doing something, right? So he could have actually, when he pressed the loading screen, start moving it, and then ding, it might be there, or something like this. So vibration is okay, but I think it's a bit too extreme, huh? It's like really popping around.
Yeah.
So that is, I mean, the blinking.
It kind of blinks at a fast enough pace that's still weirdly readable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like the this kind of going in and out, you can do that. I mean, like if a Mac goes to sleep, right? It always goes like woo, woo, kind of slowly pulsing light going on and off, and so in that sense, it's a lot of. I think he potentially passed the threshold of this thing as being too annoying. It's just. Do we have the playlist? Let's go back to yours maybe for a second.
The first design is a fairly standard calculator layout. When someone clicks any one of the buttons, it changes the justification.
So in that sense, yours is much more subtle, right? I mean, making it bigger and smaller and changing the justification is a small thing, but it is annoying. But you would still potentially, if you had to, you probably still use it, right? The loading screen that he showed, is also, again, if you just have something that's very sluggish and just the response time is just so slow, that's okay as well. And you don't necessarily even have to indicate it with loading. You just do let it slowly come up, and then slowly go back. You don't even have to justify it with loading, But in any case, so that's quite good.
The text button and in the results field randomly to left centered or left centered.
Can I make this
right
smaller?
Justified, and it also changes the font size from very small to a bigger. Each of the buttons is.
I like this one from the conceptual idea, doing it by alphabetically, by just sorting the button by, the first letter of the word, it's an interesting way. And I think that's a very good one. It's a very good example of how you can organize elements by a system that is completely irrelevant, right?
Yeah.
So you, in the same way, probably sometimes if you would have actually have organized it by the numerical character, that might also sometimes be useless, right? So in that sense of understanding that, well, what is the organizational principle that I use to lay it out, and then doing something that's completely, in this case, useless. It makes you think about, well, what is actually the value of this organizational purpose. So in that sense, that's pretty smart. In terms of like the rollover effect, yeah. Again, actually, what you do actually here is you actually already put several ideas in there, right? You've got 3 ideas in here. You've got the sorting order, turning it diagonally, and the rollover effect. These are actually 3 effects, and each one of them is already an idea. So very often in design, let's say, what you would do is you try to receive clarity of the design, and that is achieved by focusing on one idea and working out this one idea. If you put too many things together, then you potentially get also interaction effects, So in that sense, if you got an idea, well, bring out this one idea, and present it, instead of 3 ideas. I mean, there's no reason. I mean, you could have, for example, also, sorry. Sorry. So you could have actually made 3 videos after each other, right? That would have been possible. If I say you got 3 ideas, it's good. If you do some more, it doesn't hurt, right? So if you got like, wow, so many great ideas that I had, well, make a couple more, So in that sense, I would think that the annoyance level that you get at is slightly more subtle and probably more successful, because the one with Joshua is so strong that people would just abandon it. You know, they wouldn't do it. If you get a bicycle that is squeaking, you would still use it, right? It's annoying, but it still works, so you still do it. But if like the gears are broken, you just don't use the bicycle. Okay, so we were with this one. So what else does he have in petto?
How it will vibrate.
Okay, with the vibration.
So let's do a demo.
You got the vibration.
Let's go 1 again. That's plus 5.
So again, these are actually two ideas. It's the blinking, and it is the vibration. So in that sense, he could actually have just done one of those ideas and worked it out. I mean, vibrations is actually, well, if you would do, for example, gaze tracking, right, or eye tracking, wouldn't it, I mean, you can actually, you know, if you have one of those Tobii systems where the camera is inside of the monitor and actually knows what you're looking at. So what would be really sweet if the system tracks where you look at and it always pushes the window away, so you can never look at it. Because as soon as you look at it, they move it away. That is annoying, right? So okay, that would go beyond, you know, what was possible in this 1 week and stuff like that. But then you got something that is, you know, very interactively annoying, I suppose.
And so on and so on.
Okay.
So that's it for the second design of the annoying calculator. Welcome to the third and last design of Joshua's annoying calculator. First annoying feature is what is similar to the first design, where we have flashing space screen which flashes red and white. And the second annoying feature is the number buttons flashing yellow when different number buttons are flashing differently. But the operator buttons are now kept normal. The last feature is called the press 1 to continue feature. What does that mean is whatever buttons that you press on the calculator, after pressing, it will proceed to a press 1 to continue state. So you have to press the button number 1 in order to press the next button. So what does that mean? I'll do the demo. So let's start with 1 as usual. See that now the display screen is showing press 1 to continue. So whatever buttons that are pressed now, it will not work. Oh, and notice that 1 will randomly be switched with another number button. So 1 has switched with 8. So press 1. There we go. We got 1 here on the spare screen. So let's press 6. Press 1 and continue, and 1 is not here. It's gone to 3. So it's here. And now we got 6 here. So let's try using the operate buttons. Let's go plus. And as you can see, we still have to press 1 and continue even using the operate buttons. And 1 looks like to be here. Okay, let's do another button. Let's do 7. 1 is here. Let's go minus. So what I want to show is that wherever you press, as just now we press minus, press 5, 6, 9, 8, 7, 3, 2, 4. For that button is being pressed, we should see a very big number, but don't think so. I think we only see the minus symbol being shown here. I'll press times, divide, or plus, wherever you press it doesn't work. So let's press 1. And as what we predicted, we only see the minus sign. So that's it for the third design of a knowing calculator.
All right. Cool, those were all the videos that we got. Melody, have you created a video?
Yeah, but I couldn't upload it, so that now I have uploaded to the Dropdown.
Oh, why could you not upload it?
It's too big,
How big is it?
more than 200.
Yeah, that's probably going to be too big. Okay, but well, we could potentially have. Do you have it on your laptop?
Yeah.
Can we plug yours in and see it? Actually, first of all, guys, 23 minutes late. Jesus. I mean, that's just not good, right? And it's not the first time that you guys are late. We started on time, and so this is very unprofessional, and I'm not happy about that. Do you have VGA? Okay, then we cannot show it. This room only has VGA. Right, so those were all the videos. Right, so what we're going to do next is that so far we have done, essentially trying to get you to understand visual quality, and then we moved over to automate that. And now we started a little bit into interactivity by using a basic GUI, and the next step is actually to take the interaction a step further. So what we want to do next is to have a different type of interaction. And what we're planning to do is essentially to use interaction not with a pocket calculator, but with a robot. And to do that, luckily, we have a couple of robots, and we also have a software called Choreograph, which you can use to essentially work with to design the interaction with a robot. I put it this. So, but first of all, I guess you need to have a little bit of an introduction as to, what's this whole robot thing about. So what do you know about robots?
Do you program them to perform tasks or action?
Moving machine.
Have you ever worked with a robot? Did you ever program a robot? Have you ever interacted with a robot?
Yes.
Yeah? How? When? Was it with Eduardo studied or?
That's when you get studies.
Oh, when Jürgen
I
studies.
actually want to be robotics as well.
Yeah. Well, so that you're actually quite privileged, because you're one of the very few who actually ever did this. And that is kind of part of the issue that we have to some degree, is that the knowledge that people generally have about robots is pretty much just media. Barely anybody worked with them or interacted with them. So the knowledge that we have of them is pretty much that. I mean, the robot actually comes from, the word robot comes from interestingly from an artist. It was Karel Kapczak, and he, in the 1920s, he had a theater play called Rossum's Universal Robots, and that's where the word robot actually comes from the 1920s. And interesting, what I find quite amazing is that there is actually a photograph of the setup. So this is an actual photograph from the play from 1920s where these guys, actually are the robots, And that's quite interesting that a photograph has been preserved from that time. But the idea, of course, of having an artificial being is, of course, much older. Much, much older. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about a couple of robots. So here, do you know these two? Did you ever see an episode of that? So this is Star Trek, Next Generation. This is Mr. Data on the left. And that's his brother, Lore, on the right. Never seen that? Okay. Well, if you had seen that, then you would know is that Mr. Data is quite a peculiar character. So Mr. Data is, of course, an android. And what he does is that, he is stronger and he is smarter and he's in many ways superior to humans. But somehow, he wants to be like a human. So he's always struggling with humor, for example. He doesn't understand humans, or he doesn't understand emotions, or something like this. And so therefore, he's kind of like in this constant quest of, all right, I want to be, like a human. And this kind of myth, that machines want to be like us is not just Mr. Data. We have it in AI. Do you see AI? Steven Spielberg, 2001? No? So that's based on a short story. And on the left, essentially, you have got, these are actually both of them are robots. And, the left one has got this tagline that he wants to be a real boy. And that's kind of his mission, is to become human. Or you have it in The Bicycle Man, 1999, with, again, the idea we know that actually a robot spends all of his time trying to become more and more human. And in the end, he's only given human rights under the condition that he accepts mortality. So he rather dies to become human than just being just a robot, being happy with that. It even goes further that you have in Blade Runner, you've got the character Rachel. Who of you have seen Blade Runner? No? No? Yes? In Blade Runner, you have this android who is practically indistinguishable from humans. And she doesn't even know that she's a robot. She thinks that she is a human. So the question is then, why on earth do all these script writers and movie makers put this myth forward that robots want to be like us? And pretty much the only thing that I could come up with is flattery. So we as humans have difficulties accepting that maybe there are creatures who are smarter and stronger than us. If they are, then somehow they still want to be like us. We just cannot have it that we are not number one on this planet. So essentially, it's a form of flattery that we've sort of we are so special in ourselves that, we robots, they certainly would want to be like us. So let's have an example. Let's see.
But you haven't answered my question. If a robot could genuinely love a person, what responsibility does that person hold toward that mecha in return? It's a moral question, isn't it?
The oldest one of all. But in the beginning, didn't God create Adam to love him?
Which movie? That was AI. Think about this. God created the humans, and he takes this as a metaphor for the responsibility that we have for our robots. right? So one of the things that we really somehow want is to be a creator. We create essentially copies of ourselves. And if you are into Christian belief, then, God essentially created the humans in his image, right? Interesting. Why would he do that? I mean, obviously so that we look particularly good, right? Which of course is silly because, if you want to be a creator, have a baby. That's all it takes. You don't actually have to, create a robot to be a creator. And actually, at some point, on a conference, I pointed exactly that out. It's like, maybe we shouldn't be so obsessed with that. But the interesting thing, of course, there is that if we want to recreate us, if we want to create an artificial human being, to be able to do that, we actually need to understand what it means to be human. So you can only copy something if you actually understand what it means or what it is that you copy. If you don't understand that, then you can't copy it. So in that sense, doing research on robotics to some degree actually helps us to understand humans. Well, there's a bit of a trade-off there because, again, it might not be necessary to duplicate the processes. So let me point out, if you, for example, wanted to equip a robot with the ability to process emotions, it does not mean that this processing has to be done in a way that humans do it. The only thing that is required is that the result is similar to what a human would do, no matter what the processing is inside. So in that sense, there is no actual need of the robot. No, the robotic brain doesn't have to use neurons. It doesn't have to be structured like a human brain. It can be different if the result is similar to what humans are, but still. And of course, then we get this a question about who of you has seen Battlestar Galactica, the new one? You definitely do not watch enough sci-fi. So these three ladies are all androids. And in this particular television show, again, they are, in this case, really indistinguishable from humans. You cannot tell them apart. And to make things worse in this television series, these androids actually are not our friends. Or I use the word ours, I should say there. So essentially you have these spaceships that are trying to escape from, some attacking robots. And amongst themselves, they have robots which are indistinguishable from them. Now, what kind of horror is that? That, of course, came at a time, Battlestar Galactica was mid-2000s, so it was after the 2001 attacks. And this whole idea about sleeper cells, that you've got terrorists amongst you, which just look perfectly normal, and suddenly they turn around and kill everybody. This show perfectly digs into this fear. Like, you have people amongst you who are just like you can't tell them apart. But then, at a point switch, they can just turn into your enemies and go around killing. So that's a really bad situation. Now, the interesting thing, of course, is that it's this inference, and it's also with Battlestar Galactica. The robots there have nothing better to do than go around killing humans. Like, why should robots be so obsessed with that? Why are they so obsessed with our extinction? Just because potentially we created them? So what? Would you go around killing your parents just like that because they created you? Pointless. So if you are smarter and stronger, shouldn't you actually be also wiser and not go around killing everybody? And I don't think that humans are really a good example because, potentially we are smarter than most animals on this planet. And we actually make a good effort at killing everybody right now with our environmental policies. So I don't think that we're necessarily a good example And actually there are much worse examples of what you do, because this kind of fear about superiority and what happens when you have a creature or something that is superior, how does it treat the inferior, is a fear. And if we go back to history, we do not have a good history with this. Whenever you had like one society who considers themselves superior to another, like when you have the conquistador going to South America, right? You just declare all of these peoples, they're not really humans, they're actually animals. And then you can do with them whatever you want, right? And out of this bad behavior that we had, not of the conquistador, but also we have the Holocaust. You just declare pretty much a random group of people who have a religious belief. It's not even a biological thing. It's not skin color, nothing. It's just a religious belief that you can, just adopt, and you just declare, you're inferior, you're animals, we have to get rid of you. Right? Or right now we have it with IS, essentially, who is trying Islamic State, who is just, going after people based on what? A god? It's not even competition in terms of, anything else. So it's really weird why you would do that. Slavery, same thing. Like, we did this as well. We just declare a certain amount of people by some criteria to be inferior, and then we just turn them into slaves. So out of this bad history of how we treat inferiors, we assume that if there ever would be a superior beings, they would do the same to us. Right? So, this is the myth too. Robots kill, enslave, and rule all humans. They've got nothing better to do than to do that. Right? And that's like their sole purpose. It's like to get rid of us. Why? So if we go back to this Star Trek, I talked to you about Lore, the brother of Data. Well, he had something, he was supposed to be an early prototype. And he actually had something that Data did not have, and that is, he had some sort of emotion chip. Right? And then what does he do? He's got nothing better to do than, again, to kill and enslave all humans. Does he not have anything better to do than that? Okay, and while we're at quite absurd things, here's a couple of other very interesting examples of interesting ideas of how, people imagine robots to be in the future.
With the swiftness of a deadly cosmic ray, the Earth is invaded by indestructible moon monsters. Their ghastly mission, death for all humans. What astounding technical developments are being made to protect mankind? Robot Monster brings you an actual preview of the devastating forces of our future. Unsuspected revelations of incredible horrors that will terrify you with their brutal reality.
There is no escape from me. Very well. I will recalculate. Your death will be indescribable. Fool humans, there is no escape.
Yeah, so that's interesting and weird, what people kind of, very often these kind of things project fears of that time, in the 1950s, those were apparently some fears. But there's also some other fun stuff, and actually the next one I do appreciate because it does actually show a completely different dimension of human-robot interaction.
You look like a stud.
A super robo stud. Come on, let's go meet him.
kind of nervous.
Really getting off.
Come on, tight, baby. Keep that game tight.
I hope he's athletic.
Huh?
So, where's my date?
What do you mean? He's right here. Gay robot, meet R2 Steve 2. What up, Steve 2? My man rocking the rainbow G, you big time.
Talk to him. Oh my god, he's so hot. I wish he was straight.
You guys, check this out. He loves to party.
Oh,
Watch. Shut.
Introduce yourself, gay robot.
I think we've already met.
Really?
Oh.
When?
When I cleaned out our toilet with his arm, and last week when Big Mike barked in his head.
Wait. Gay robot, I think he's gonna ask you the formal. Wait. Yeah. Say yes, come on.
This is ridiculous. Is this how you guys see me? Just a plunger vacuum bucket thing? I'm out of here.
It's so bad for Gay Robot. I go back for Steve too. Does he need a ride home?
Well, this is again a completely different dimension of interaction that we usually don't really think about. You know, bring sexuality into the concept of robots. Although I have to admit, I found another example which is less funny and just weird. Bad Movie 2, 1986, Cobra. Some sort of stupid photo shooting, and the idea is that they put a model next to robots for, I have no idea what reason. Why would you do that? Complete strangeness. Anyway, but coming back to the idea about ruling, I mean, what we have essentially is, for example, in Blade Runner, the interesting thing again is you have a character there which is superior to human beings in many ways. And then the humans can't tolerate it, so they send, this police cop after these guys to kill them. We definitely do have an inferiority complex. Terminator, in all its reincarnation, all the time, the robots are after us to kill us in the future, in the present, and so forth. Battlestar Galactica, originally 1978, and then the new version in 2003. Again, you got the robots, they're after us to kill us. The Matrix, same thing. You have essentially, robots or machines, they're after us, and eventually they just use us as being batteries, which has been shown is probably the most uneconomical battery you can have. It doesn't make any sense. iRobot 2004, again, this one is particularly another kind of other problem that I kind of have with robots, and that is, or not just with AI. You've got, again, this army of robots who are controlled by central AI, who essentially, for humans' own safety, they decide to, lock everybody away because humans can't be left to their own devices. And then as you have it, you would have a central AI system. And you only have to kill that, and all the robots kind of drop dead. How stupid would you have to be to design a system that collapses at a single point? It's called a single point of failure. Right? You cannot have it that, if you just kill one computer, that everything stops. And this is kind of like a myth that you have going on in all sort of movies. Like they always go for the central unit, and then everything else kind of passes away and problem is solved, right? If you've got any kind of intelligence, what you do is you distribute the intelligence, right? So that even if one part fails, the rest can continue to operate. Very, very bad idea. Anyway, And if you're not familiar with it, of course, in science fiction, Isaac Asimov. Have any of you ever read or anything from Isaac Asimov? Very famous science fiction writer. Many movies, actually. I, Robot, for example, is based on one of his short stories. And he came up with the 3 laws of robotics that you can read through here. But essentially he came up with this idea that, well, if robots would be programmed with these 3 laws, then there's no way that robots could do us any harm, right? And have you been to the presentation of a month ago or 2? We had this. What was his name again? Oh, that's embarrassing. We had this great roboticist over from Georgia Tech, who had this big talk about killer robots. Remember that? Arkin. Ronald Arkin was here. Did you visit that? Oh, there you had a chance to meet one of the most renowned roboticists in the world, and an expert on robot ethics, and you decide to spend your time otherwise. You should really use these opportunities, like when they present themselves, expand your horizon and go to these talks. Anyway, so these are the 3 laws. So essentially, a robot may not injure a human, must obey orders, and it must protect its own existence. These are the basic 3 rules. And out of that, everything would be okay. Now, this is, of course, then what Homer Simpson does for this. Here you got to see them robots where this is implemented.
Our primary directive is to preserve human life.
And here I was waiting till you slept to rob you of your copper. It's crazy, but...
Homer, move away from me. You are still in the road.
Hush, bionic prince, as I cradle your waning form. Such a peaceful end. Oh, jeez! Hey!
So the point being, even if you have these 3 laws of robotics, it doesn't protect us from our own stupidity. And if you're interested, there's actually some interesting books, How to Survive a Robot Uprising. It was run from a CMU graduate. And the interesting thing is actually, he actually took a quite realistic approach to, where is robotics right now, where is AI right now, and what actually some real strategies that you can use to survive, for example, an artificial intelligence. If you have, let's say, a smart home, and let's say that goes crazy, what is it you can do to escape? Actually, after graduation, he became a real writer. So Daniel Wilson, he's written some novels now about robots. Or what you can do is how to build a robot army. That's the other go on it. But he does have some interesting points in there. So that's fiction. And again, the reason why this is important is that most humans, on this planet have never interacted with a robot. They've never programmed a robot. They have no exposure to robots. All they know is what has been communicated to them via the media. And those are the myths that people are being presented. So that's a bit of an issue. So fact number 1 is that robots, we create them to help us. And most of all, right now it's industrial robots. They do so much work for us, and we don't really interact with them as such other than programming them a little bit, but that's pretty much it. The closest thing we've got so far is, Roomba or floor cleaning robots. That's probably the closest thing to robots that we currently have that has actually entered the human homes. And of course, there's a big debate, even like in the media in New Zealand, about, we need to have different kind of jobs because, more and more jobs will be taken over by robots who will all be unemployed, right? But this kind of discussion, of course, is again ridiculous. It is that, yes, you can invent a wheel, and that kills some jobs. Does it mean we shouldn't invent the wheel? What's going to happen is that our job's going to change. Yes. Is that a problem? Not really. The second fact right now is that artificial intelligence is currently the bottleneck. So when it comes to the human body, we're doing pretty good. We've got quite a few robots these days which are mechanically quite all right. They can do lots of stuff. And then we can even make them look like us if we wanted to. The biggest problem that we actually do have when it comes to robots these days is energy. All of these robots, they maybe last for an hour, maybe 2 on batteries, and that's it. And that's a real challenge. It has actually a lot of design implications for them. And we should not underestimate how great our human body is, that we can go around for weeks without food, for days without water, a little bit less without air. But the point being is that we're quite good. And we're actually made for an environment in which we can survive. So we can actually be in the world. We can find water. We can, drink. We can hunt for food. We can do all these things to sustain ourselves. Robots can't. They are completely dependent on our power network. And in my interpretation is that if our mind would be simple enough for us to understand, we would be too stupid. So the question is, how much progress can we actually make with artificial intelligence? Yes, there is progress. Certainly there's progress. But the problem with artificial intelligence is that it's a moving target. One of the more interesting definitions of artificial intelligence is that artificial intelligence is everything that computers can't do. So as soon, if they can't play chess, you say, well, if a computer would ever be able to play chess, then it would be intelligent. And then they can play chess. And then we say no, there's no longer, a real, test for intelligence, and then you come up with some other criteria. And the interesting thing, of course, again, is the discussion about authenticity. What I mentioned before about, a computer or a robot doesn't necessarily have to mimic how humans work. So when when computers play chess, they play differently than humans do. One of the things they can do is they can do brute force attacks. They just calculate so far and so many steps in the future, and no human would be able to do that. They solve the problem differently. But it's okay. As long as they can beat us, who cares? Right? But what we do, of course, need is, in all of these fictions, fiction is only interesting if there's some sort of conflict, some kind of fear, and otherwise the story is boring, right? So in fiction, you will always have these problems that are being presented that we have to overcome. Otherwise, nobody's going to watch it, nobody's going to be interested in it, and you can't make any money out of it, right? So most movies that we have are all about some form of fear, right? Some sort of, yesterday I made the mistake of looking another Transformers movie, I shouldn't have done that. Which one?
Iron Man 3. It was
Iron Man 3?
It's on another channel, but it's the same time.
Yeah, so I'm getting through of them, but I regret it. Because it's just so silly, it's just, Anyway, so it's, what we actually do, and what we should do, is actually focus on other things. We should focus on science, which is essentially a hope for a better world. We need to work on better scenarios for our future world. And that's what we'll be busy with. And there are some few examples. So this is an interesting one, which talks essentially about the problem with higher developed societies versus less developed societies. As I mentioned before, we don't have a good track record, right, in terms of how we deal with societies that we consider inferior. And in this particular movie, which was a French-German production in 1999, you have this, Earth developed, or they discovered a new planet, right? And on this planet, actually humans on there, right? But they're still kind of caught up in some sort of medieval society with all its cruel aspects to it. And they have essentially a space station, circling, only observing. They don't interfere. So they learn a little bit, don't interfere, let them essentially grow up by themselves. So they don't go in and, rule them and enslave them. They don't do that. So that's a good point. But this fellow, who is actually the astronaut on the station, he observes them all the time, and at some point he just can't stop caring for them. So because one of the people actually on the planet has developed a telescope, and he points it up in the sky and actually sees the space station. So there goes your no interference policy. And at the same time, you got all sort of political upheavals, and some really bad guys get in power, the guys had invented the books, and then this bad person goes around killing all the scientists, and then he actually decides, okay, we can't just not care, we have to step in, do something about it. So he does get involved in it, and the translation of the title of the movie into English is "It's Not Easy to Be a God." Other examples are, of course, the Japanese atom boy from the 50s, atomic robot that helps and protects humans. Oh, very nice. My favorite one is Futurama. Have you ever seen Futurama? Yeah. Only one? Jesus, you miss out good stuff. So Futurama is a brilliant television show, and in there you've got a robot called Bender. Actually, you've got a lot of robots in there. And the point is, they live in parallel to the humans. This is kind of the cast of the show. They live in parallel to the humans, and they don't really care. They're not bothered with, we have to be superior, or we have to rule you, or you have to rule us. No. They just live in parallel to the human society, and they interact, and they do all sorts of things together, and they're just another, just different. And as a matter of fact, even these days, when I'm going to show you a video clip about, some time ago we got a robot, into the lab called Papiro, and I took this robot home to my kids. And this is what happened. Literally, I just unboxed it. So the point being is, for some reason they decided, this is a robot that needs to be kissed. It was not planned. They just came up with this idea. Probably because it has LEDs on it that sort of look like a mouth, right? Or supposed to show like a mouth. And that is quite an interesting thing. So we do not need to be in this fearful interaction about, they're going to take over and kill us all. It's silly. Right? It's really, really silly. So anyway, that is essentially a bit of introduction to HRI, and I'm going to be in touch with you soon for setting up a lab for you to get involved with some robots.